Hello. What do you know? This is Joe.
Just when I have all the answers, all the questions change.
Yeah, that's my ongoing theme. Just when I have all the answers, all the questions change. Everything changes. Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? It just is. It just is. I'm in a good mood, or maybe a weird mood, maybe just, I don't know. I'm also sweaty. No, it's not what you're thinking. How can I say that? I have no idea what you're thinking. Well, whatever you're thinking, you dirty little minx, I just took a shower. And I've spent the last few or several minutes waiting to cool down, but I just got tired of waiting. I don't know if I'm going to cool down, and I was going to open a window, but then I thought I don't want to open a window. I live in an apartment, and if I open a window, there's more likely that I might bother somebody or become self-conscious because the window's open, even though probably nobody gives a shit. It's I wouldn't be, really out of line opening the window and projecting my voice out in between the buildings because it's 9:19 a.m. I had to get closer to my phone to see because I'm not wearing my glasses. So if you're hearing hear that? If you hear any this noise, occasionally it's because I'm wiping the sweat off of my face or other parts of my body. So but that's not why I'm here. Am I here to talk about my sweaty body after taking a shower? Well, apparently I am. Maybe I should just talk about that for the next 4 hours. Why not? I can do whatever I want, or not. I like paradoxes, or that's not really a paradox. It is, kind of, is it? Or isn't it? I could do whatever I want, or not. That's not really a paradox. But I've been thinking about a lot of things. I've been basically doing the dog chasing his tail routine. And sometimes that's okay. I mean, especially if you're aware you're doing it. I think just, the mental masturbation, just thinking about something and then thinking about the 180-degree thing, trying to solve a problem or not. Maybe even just spending time, just thinking. I mean, what else are we going to do, right? We got jobs, sure. Sometimes on those jobs we have to think. I got the kind of job where I occasionally have to think. Of course, that I halfway joke there because every job you have to think. I mean, even if you're shoveling shit, I mean, literally, not metaphorically, but even if you're literally shoveling shit, I mean, your brain is involved in the process. There are thoughts going on. First of all, there's the mechanics of, moving the shovel under the shit, raising the shovel with the shit in it, and then putting the shit wherever the shit needs to go. So have I reached my quota? Is there a quota? I mention a lot of times on this podcast that at some point I have to use profanity because I just by default keep the explicit tag on every podcast. But I don't keep the explicit tag there because I necessarily need profanity, although apparently I do to an extent. But I don't. I can go a long time. I've been in many work situations where I have not used profanity. I've been around small children where I constantly tell them to fuck themselves. So there's that. Situational selves, right? I mean, be yourself. I was thinking about that among other things, when I was in the shower, be yourself. Or I guess it was before I got in the shower. I was standing in front of the mirror talking to myself. I was going to say I'm not ashamed to admit it. Oh, wait, I just did. I just said that. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was talking to myself in front of the mirror like I'm the only one. What I was specifically doing was just thinking about doing stand-up again, which I did last Sunday, and I'm going to attempt to do next Sunday. And when I say attempt, I don't mean that I will attempt to do it. What I mean is this: I will call in for a spot, and I may or may not get a spot. That's the attempting part. Once I'm on stage, I'm not attempting anymore. I'm actually doing. Whether or not I'm funny, that's another story. Or it is the story. It's part of the story. It's part of why I'm here right now. Because what I was thinking, and I'm now going to talk about, as I continue to bounce around and chase my tail, I was talking about thinking and being yourself. Should I write that down? Yeah, sure. What the hell? I've had this blank piece of paper here for the last few episodes and a pencil. I haven't written anything down. Be yourself. Because I'll get back to that. What I really wanted to talk about is having fun. And I just wrote on the piece of paper, have fun, because that's really, I think that's going to be the title of this podcast. And the theme for next week's stand-up set, or whenever I get another spot, is have fun. And here's the bridge. Here's what I was thinking about using today's podcast for primarily, aside from my usual stream of consciousness babble, is to serve as a bridge between last week's stand-up set and next week's. And I'm holding my arms out. My arms are outreached. My hands are open. I'm representing last Sunday with the right hand and next Sunday with the left hand. Now you've got the full visual. Isn't that useful? So there's part of it, but it's also about comedy. I'm writing that down, and it's about life. I don't have to keep writing this down, do I? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I thought maybe that's something that could motivate me to continue to do this. Do I need to motivate myself? Do I? I do not. I do. I don't. It's up to me. I've gotten into this mindset in recent years that, and I know I've mentioned this before, and why do I keep saying that? Because I've mentioned everything before. But so what if I occasionally use that phrase? As I've said before. Am I committing a crime? No. Unless you're a grammar Nazi, or that wouldn't even be a grammar Nazi, it would be a cliche Nazi maybe. What was I saying? As I've said before, here, I could infinitely transgress. As I said before, as I've said before, as I've said before, because I've said that before. I've said, quote, as I've said before, end quote, many times. Trying to find my way back. I'm not going to. I'm back on the bridge. Here's the bridge. Motivation. That's right. Do I care? I do. When I say that I'm not motivated to do something, it's not that I don't care. It's just that I don't want to push myself. And this is not all about comedy. So if you are listening to this, and you are, but if you are listening to this and you're listening to me talking about stand-up comedy and you're thinking, yeah, but I'm not a stand-up comic. I can't relate to that. Apply it to yourself somehow. That's what I would suggest. Although then a little voice in my head said, don't be preachy. I don't like people being preachy, and therefore I don't want to be preachy because I like to be concentric. I would like my beliefs, my beliefs and my behaviors to be in line with each other. So therefore, if I don't like people being preachy, I shouldn't be preachy. But, there's a gray area. I don't know if I'm just talking about my life and what I do, That's not necessarily being preachy. I'm not telling you to be this way. I'm just talking. And I had something happen recently where an old friend, and I don't know, that could both be a friend who is old and somebody who I've known for a lot of years, but an old friend commented about my podcast, and she was saying how she enjoyed it and how it made a difference in her day. And wow, that's like the best thing I could hear. Even one person, and maybe I've said that before too. I've had a couple of my loyal listeners, and because a couple of my loyal listeners have told me that they enjoy this, and sometimes one in particular saying it made a difference, and another one just saying how she enjoys it. And when I say a couple of loyal listeners, it's because that's, for all I know, that's all I've got is a couple of loyal listeners. But what more do I need? What if I have none? Well, that would be sad. But would it be? See, this is what I'm doing. I like this mindset. Constantly keep flipping the coin over, because is that wishy-washy, or is that analytical, or is it, I don't know. There's a lot of words I could go through the thesaurus. But if I keep going back and forth and flipping the coin over and saying, oh, look at the heads. Well, maybe it's tails. I look at that. You know what? It's heads and it's tails. There's a quantum thing going on there, right? Or it's neither. We're beginning to find out a lot about, in fact, I'm going to write it down because I think it's important, spectrum. A lot of things that we collectively, as a society, as a collection of human beings, have been thinking of as being black or white. And I'm not talking about races here, just talking about symbolically, let's say up or down, so I don't bring race into it accidentally. We think of things as up or down, or heads or tails. Can I get specific? Gender is one, because because gender has been in the news lately with some the discriminatory laws in a couple of states discriminating against transgender people, actually discriminating against LGBT people in general, but transgender specifically. And I don't know where your beliefs lie, and I don't care. But I want to make a broader point without getting into something that's going to be controversial or piss anybody off, is just that things are a spectrum. We're beginning to discover that things like gender are not binary. And you see, now that might even be something where you just might cause you to hit the stop button or throw your phone out the window, which I don't recommend. If you don't like what I'm saying, don't destroy your phone. But that's kind of what I feel like is people's reaction about things these days is just, they don't like something, instead of just going, oh, I don't like that, and moving on to something else. Or I don't like that, and then trying to change it, or, they'll say, I don't like that, and then they basically destroy their phone or burn down the barn because the chickens are making noise. I don't know what the fuck. I'm not very good at analogies or metaphors. Where was I? Spectrum. That's where God, I'm glad I wrote it down. See, maybe this is handy sometime. Balance. That's another thing. Because as I started to mention earlier about that this isn't necessarily about stand-up comedy for you or for me. Stand-up comedy is a tool. You're a tool? Stand-up comedy for me it's a tool. It's something that I did years ago. Seriously. I was serious about comedy. And then I did it for 6 years fairly seriously. And then mostly what I say is, and then I've been doing it off and on for the last 25 years, but mostly off. And that's kind of how I am with performing in general. Among other things, a lot of things we like to do that we don't get around to doing. I mean, I'm sure, whatever. So getting back to the point of one of the points, the point of this doesn't have to be about stand-up comedy. You can fill in the blank, whatever your favorite hobby is. What's a hobby that you like? What do you like? Gardening? Then whenever you hear me say stand-up comedy, think gardening. When I say the Comedy Store, think my garden. Whatever it happens to be. Because it's all tied together. It doesn't matter if when I'm not doing stand-up at some point, if I'm strictly thinking about performing or things that I enjoy doing creatively, I've performed as a musician and as an actor, and that's the thing I've really mainly been doing for the last 10 years. But even that, okay, now let's get away from performing, because too much inside baseball there, right? What else do I do? Walking, riding my bike, travel. I'm going to travel. There's one. Now, I'm not hugely into travel. It's not that I have anything against it philosophically or for myself. I think travel's good. I think if more people traveled and visited other countries and spent time with other people and hanging out in other cultures, the world would probably be a better place. I'll go out on a limb there. I don't know, maybe not. I'm thinking about it. Maybe that's too grandiose, but I'm still an idealist. I'm an old idealist, and I hope to keep that attitude to the day I die. Nothing that says when you get older, you gotta be a crotchety, old, narrow-minded bastard. I think crotchety, old, narrow-minded bastards were probably crotchety, young, narrow-minded bastards. Probably. I got no statistics to back that up, but travel. Travel's a thing, right? So let's say you like to travel. Okay, you like to travel. You do it occasionally, I'm assuming, unless you're extremely wealthy and you do it all the time, or you travel for your job. Maybe you're lucky enough that you like to travel and your job takes you a bunch of places. That's cool, right? And I'm tying this into comedy and the Comedy Store for me because why? I don't know. I'll get back to it. If I had a point, it might come back, and it might not, and it doesn't matter. Or it does. No, is that tiresome? Is that tiresome? I'm not really, I didn't really set out trying to demonstrate the point about flipping the coin over, looking at heads, looking at tails, looking at heads. I didn't start out with that being a major theme, but it's, so I like when themes emerge. That's also what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to continue trying to do, is not trying. Now there's a paradox: try and not try at the same time. It's kind of, part of me feels like it's a paradox, and part of me feels like it's a balance. Maybe it's another spectrum thing. A lot of times I think when we see things as binary, it's just because we have language and we create words. And Alan Watts talks about that. You can look him up. I've mentioned him before, and I'm mentioning him again now. Alan Watts, Watts. Alan, I believe, with one L. I believe. In fact, I'm fairly certain. What did Alan Watts say? Words. Oh, there you go. A lot of times the things we argue about are really, we're just arguing about language or definition or the imperfection of language. We create words that define, that describe things, and then we argue about the words, and we get further and further away from the point, from the concept, from the thing it's describing. And I wish I had an example, but I don't. So how's that? That's why I'm not a lawyer. Or a philosopher for that matter, because when I listen to Alan Watts, of course that's his job, or that was his job when he was alive. His job now is being dead. Not much money in that. Unless you're alive and you're burying dead people, then there's a lot of money in that, isn't there, huh? Am I right? There's a job that doesn't get hit by the economy, right? Burying dead people. How did I get here? Oh my God. How did I get anywhere? It's all tied together. There's a point. There's an overlying point there, is that everything's tied together. When I talk about comedy, I'm really just talking about life. When I'm going up on stage in the Comedy Store now, it's to me, it's like it's a microcosm of my life. What I'm trying to do is to not try. And there's a balance in there somewhere. And I know it sounds paradoxical, but it's the idea that I want to put forth an effort. I want to set foot on that stage and grab the microphone, but to not try to be anything in particular, not try to be funny. Although obviously that's the point at a comedy club. You got to know the audience, know your venue. I mean, if I didn't want to be funny at some level, I wouldn't be at the Comedy Store. I'd do karaoke. You know, if I wanted to perform and not be funny, I could do slam poetry, or I could learn to rap terribly because I'm a 56-year-old white guy. Now, see, even as I say that, that's a limiting thought. There's nothing that says a 56-year-old white guy can't rap, although evidence would say that when 56-year-old white guys try to rap, it's just terrible. But it doesn't have to be. Does it? Trying to not try. Be yourself. That's what I was thinking about. You know, no matter what you do, you're being yourself. I mean, when you're being if you're being the kind of self that's trying really hard and exerting effort and clenching your sphincter and gritting your teeth and scrunching up your face and going, I gotta try real hard. That's being yourself. And then let's say you go into the same activity, whatever it is, like gardening. Although I don't know how many people are clenching their teeth and puckering their sphincter and getting all when they're gardening. But let's say you've got this person who sometimes they go out there garden and they go, God damn it, today I'm going to garden my ass off. I'm going to fucking garden so hard. I'm going to, goddamn, I'm going to take those fucking gardening tools and I'm going to garden. You know, that you could do that. And you're being yourself. Or that same gardener could wander out into the garden and go, oh, hello, garden. Oh, look at the dirt. Isn't the dirt lovely? Let me take my gardening tool and gently caress the dirt. And, you know, these can both be the same people, the same person. Of course it can be. And in both instances, that person is being themselves. That got awkward, wording-wise. That person being, you are being yourself all the time, every minute of the day. You don't have to try to be yourself. Now, I know what we mean, though. I think I know what we mean. I'll tell you what I mean. What I mean what I hear when I hear somebody say, be yourself. What they're saying is not to try. That, not to try to be anything, not to pretend, not to put on a front, not to be self-conscious. See, but even I would argue to say, well, you know what? At those times when you're self-conscious, you're still being yourself. You're being your self-conscious self. Be yourself. Just be yourself. You know, I think really the secret to life is just being yourself. That says nothing. I think I've driven that point into the ground. Can I cross that off? Or, yeah, let me put a check mark next to it. Be yourself. But let me get back to the main point, because I'm at around 24 minutes right now, and I don't know how long I'm going to go on here, but maybe I'll make this a 30-minute one, give or take, since I'm starting to become conscious of time, and also I'm a little hungry. I did shower, but I didn't have breakfast. I'd also like to make some coffee, although apparently I don't need it. I'm feeling a little goofy and energetic right now, which is a good thing. I'm being my happy self. I mentioned travel earlier. I'm going to visit my daughter in Europe in a couple of weeks. In fact, 2 weeks from today. I'm going to hang out with her. She's at the end of her study abroad program that's been 4 months. And she's been in France for 4 months, and I'm going to go visit her. Going to hang out in Paris for a while, and then go across the bay. Not the bay, what is it? The English Channel. Go across the channel to England because, look, I'm a huge Beatles fan. I've been a Beatles fan since as long as I can remember, since before I can remember, because my mom tells me stories about when I was watching the Beatles that I first saw the Beatles, and then I used to carry a comb around with me all the time, trying to make bangs, trying to make my hair into Beatle hair, even though it was 1964, so little kids in 1964. In fact, most people in 1964 did not have enough hair to be able to make Beatle bangs. You can't just comb short hair and make Beatle bangs. What a fucking idiot I was. Little 4-year-old Joe. I'm sure I was adorable. If I do say so myself. Where was I? Travel. That's right. It's kind of ridiculous that I have not been to England yet, have not made the pilgrimage. But whatever, some people never make the pilgrimage to whatever place is significant to them. Whether it be Liverpool or Israel, whatever place is significant to them for, their religion. My religion happens to be the Beatles. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to travel. And like I started to say earlier, it's not that so much I'm into travel, but I do enjoy it. And I know I'm going to enjoy it. In fact, here's the thing about trying. I'm going to tie all this shit together before I go. Because tying it together after I go wouldn't make sense, right? If I like stopped right now and just walked out of the room and uploaded this and tying it together after I go wouldn't make sense. So let me tie this together. Trying and not trying. When I go to Europe, I don't want to repeat a pattern that I've had in the past where I think like, oh, I'm going to find myself or something significant's going to happen or it's going to be an enlightening, amazing experience and I want to do all these amazing things. No, I'm going to go hang out with my daughter. We've got ourselves places to stay while we're there. And in fact, we're using Airbnb instead of the traditional hotel motel route. We're going to be staying in people's apartments, not with them. We at least did the thing where, people are just renting out an entire apartment or house, but in our case, for our budget, apartment. So that's more like the experience of living in the city. And then we're going to do some touristy stuff. I have nothing against touristy stuff, but I don't really want to focus on that. I don't want to spend my entire time in Europe waiting in lines. I don't want it to be like, like it's just a larger Disneyland. I don't really get into that thing of just like hanging out with hundreds of other people in a line for hours at a time. Maybe for a couple of things, maybe the Louvre, or what's some other significant stuff in France? The Louvre, Versailles. I started studying French a little bit a few months ago with this app called Duolingo. And I've picked up a few words here and there, but then I realized, you know what, I'm not going to learn French in a few months. And I don't want to be the rude American that somehow expects everyone to speak English, but a lot of people do. And then even if not, I know that I've got my daughter with me who, one of the reasons she's studying abroad in France is because she's been taking a lot of French and she's interested in the language and she knows, and she's lived there for 4 months. So I've basically got a French tour guide with me. So she knows enough French for us both to get by. So there's that. Travel. No, the tying together part is the try/not try. I'm not going to try to have fun. I'm just going to have fun. I'm not going to try to do a certain thing, or I'm not going to go in there with expectations. I'm going to just go there. I have the usual expectations. The negative ones about travel is that, oh my God, it's going to be this miserable fucking experience. And the security people in the plane and being amongst other humans and crying babies and, oh my God. There's that. But that's a short part of it. I'll just suck it up and make it through that and then have a good time. So that's an expectation. So I lied. I do have some expectation. I expect I'm going to have a good time. But it's not going to be all regimented. It's not going to be every minute of the day scheduled. It's not going to be like the old movie from the 1960s. If it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium. That's also why we're just going to Paris and London. And then actually when we're in London, though, we're going to branch out and go other places. But there's not a rigid plan. Our only plan is really I fly there. We got a place to stay in Paris for a few days, go over to England. We're just going to stay in London the whole time as far as our home base. But then the rest of it is, I don't know, we might take a train to Scotland. We'll probably go to Liverpool. At the very least, I know I'm going to go to Abbey Road because that's in London. So I will go to Abbey Road. I'm going to fight the urge to do the stereotypical picture of me walking across from that same point of view that's on the album cover. Because enough people have done that. So what I'm probably going to do is just, maybe just take a selfie with that iconic crosswalk in the background, or maybe, record myself walking across from my point of view instead of from the photographer's point of view. But whatever, point is, I'm at least going to make that pilgrimage, and then we may or may not go to Liverpool. I'm thinking, since it's taken me 56 years to get to England, chances are we will go to Liverpool. And if we do go to Liverpool, then the main point of that pilgrimage would be to go to the cavern, which I've Googled it, and it exists at least in some form. At least it's there. I can take a picture of it on the outside. Again, it's all about the selfies. It's 2016. It's all about the selfies. But I guess the main point is it's just kind of loosey-goosey, and I want to just not feel anxiety about it and just go and have a good time and hang out and haven't seen, for one thing, I haven't seen my daughter in 4 months, so that'll be cool. That's the coolest part of it. And then just, be in a different place. Be in a different place. And you know what? The whole time, whether I like it or not, I'm going to be myself. I tie it together. Motivation. That was another thing I was talking about. Do I have to tie together with motivation? Well, I'm motivated to go. I want to go because my daughter's there. There, check. Spectrum. Yeah, everything's a spectrum. Everything, most things. Let's just say everything. Things that we used to think are just up and down, heads or tails, are really a spectrum. How do I tie that together? I don't want to. Check. Have fun. Let's close on that, because that really was going to be the thing I was going to predominantly talk about. Here's what I forgot to do last week. Here's what I did, even though I was being myself, and I didn't have a terrible time on stage. It was one of those times where, it's an open mic, and I don't know if you've ever been to an open mic, but it's a mixed bag. There tends to be everything from professional comedians who are trying out stuff down to somebody who's never set foot on stage and they're like a deer in the headlights, and everything in between. And as far as the audience goes, it can be a lot of people in the audience, or like last week, nobody. Actually, I'm exaggerating. There was one person in the audience for the majority of the first hour of the show, which was the open mic. The Comedy Store has it set up so on Sundays they have the first hour from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. is an open mic, and then from 8 p.m. to whenever it ends is the best of San Diego. And then, I saw an alert pop up on my phone, but I'm still recording. I put it on airplane mode so I wouldn't be interrupted, but it's still got stuff that's stored on the phone that's popping up alerts. I got distracted. But here is the point. The point is that open mic is a mixed bag. And last week, as I started to say, and now will continue to say, it wasn't terrible. I had the correct attitude of going up there and just, being in control and remembering the fact that I'm not a noob. I've been doing this a long time. And even though I'm rusty, even though I have not been doing it steadily for all these years, I mean, I should not expect myself to get up there and be like some of my friends who've been doing stand-up consistently for the last 30 years. Even though I've got this old habit from childhood where I somehow expect to, if I haven't picked up a tennis racket for 20 years, I'm just going to pick it up and just be really good. But I was never really good, so that's silly. But of course, I'm still going to know how to hit a tennis ball. You throw a football at me, the chances are I'll probably catch it, but I'm going to be rusty. And especially, God, if you think about football, if I were to go out and try to run around the football field with a bunch of college football players, I would pull every muscle in my body. I went to a USC football event back I don't know, back in the early 2000s. It was around the time of the 25th. It was around the time of the 25th anniversary of the teams that I was on, because I was on the team from 78 through 80. So the 25th anniversaries were 2003, 4, and 5. And so I was going back for those reunions for those 3 years. And they also have the 50th reunion. So there was some guy back there from long before, like from even, I don't even know if, anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm doing too much math here. Point is, there was a guy who had played there years ago, like in the 1940s or 50s, and we were watching a scrimmage. We were watching the youngsters playing, and all of us on the sidelines were having this feeling of, oh man, I could go out there and do that. The muscle memory kicks in, and you forget that you're 25 years old or you're in your 40s. It's like, no, I could go out there, I could do that, right? And so the older, wiser gentleman who had played back in the 1940s said, "Yeah, I could last 2 plays, one where I run out there, and one where they carry me off on a stretcher." So that's how I feel about that. I can't go back and do that, but I can do comedy. And the thing about trying and not trying is what I forgot to do. What I forgot to do last week was, this isn't about the trying and not trying part. It's about having fun. Although I guess this week what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to have fun. But you know what? I am going to have fun. That's my number one mantra this week. And to close this thing out here, back to where I am now as far as this podcast goes and what I might do as a theme, or at least as a part of a theme for this podcast, would be to take, and again, I reach out my right arm and my right hand to represent last week. I'm going to have lessons learned. What is it that I did this week that I was not happy with? Last week, what I was not happy with was I didn't really have fun. It wasn't miserable. I reached my goals of staying in control, of not panicking, and of connecting with the audience, making eye contact. I mean, these are kind of basic things, but I had to keep certain basic things in mind, fundamentals in mind. In fact, even with football, there's this legendary story about Vince Lombardi, who, if you don't know, or even if you do know, was the football coach back in the day, back in the 50s and 60s. He coached the Green Bay Packers to a number of championships, including the first 2 Super Bowls. And legend has it that he would show up every year at the beginning of training camp with all of these professional football players, and he would hold up a football and say, "Gentlemen, this is a football." So whether that's true or not, I think it's a great message. Fundamentals. Keep reminding yourself of fundamentals. You're never, in fact, there are people, Tiger Woods comes to mind. He's won more major championships than most golfers. And he still is constantly, he has a coach and a trainer, and he's constantly working on what do I do with my wrist and my swing, and re-grooving his swing. I mean, it's constantly, everybody who's good at something is constantly tweaking the fundamentals. So my tweaking of the fundamentals is this. I have the basics down. So I went up last week. My focus was being in control, connecting with the audience. I did that. And as I've said, it might sound odd, but my focus is not on being funny, because I don't want to try to be funny. I just want to trust that, chances are, because I've been known to be an amusing person, either because I'm a goofball or just because I'll say funny things. There's a thing about, oh, do you say funny things or do you say things funny? And apparently a comic is one of those things and a comedian is the other thing. I don't know. It's like the difference between a nerd and a geek. It's like it doesn't matter which is which, but you can get laughs by saying funny things with a serious face. You can say serious things with a funny face. You can do all kinds of shit. You can say nothing and just drop your pants, whatever the fuck. I mean, you can do a lot of things to be funny. The debates about what is or isn't funny are silly because the bottom line is if somebody laughs, it's funny. Or they found it funny. I guess you could still debate it and say, well, just because nobody laughs, it doesn't mean it's not funny. Well, that's true. Like last week, one civilian in the audience, and it's technically a civilian. She was actually related to one of the comics. So really, she just did us all a favor by sitting in this section that was designated for the civilians. And so there would at least be like one person that wasn't totally off to the side, but she was still kind of off to the side. I'm setting the scene here. Basically, during the course of that hour, you have anywhere between 10, 15, 20 comedians off to the side, which is the designated comedian area. And generally, the people in the designated comedian area, while they may laugh on occasion, for the most part, they're either, especially with people in an open mic, they're thinking about what they're going to say when they go up, or if they've already gone up, they're maybe just sitting there, they've taken a breath and they're relieved, but they're just really waiting to see if they've been selected to have this special spot next week, because that's one of the things about the open mic there at the Comedy Store is the MC picks who he thinks is the funniest for that week, and that person gets to open the best of show, which means they'll get a spot which maybe actually will be in front of people, because by the time the open mic show ends, then there's a handful of people. Like there was somewhat of an audience, maybe 10 people or so in the actual civilian audience area last week. But here's the point. Is there a point? The bridge. I keep getting back to the bridge. Lesson learned last week. I felt like I just didn't have fun. There was something missing. As I was walking back to my car, I thought, oh, that was it. I forgot to have fun. And it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't my main focus. So this week, that's going to be the number one thing on top of my mind. Have fun. That will be the bridge that takes me into next week. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it's also about life, because whether or not I get a spot at the Comedy Store, that's my mantra for the week. Not just thinking about stand-up, but thinking about life. My mantra is have fun. Sometimes it's just that simple. Sometimes you just make a choice. Sometimes you can just say, I'm going to have fun, and then you do it, right? So, as always, I'm being myself, and myself is Joe, and thanks for listening.
Just when I have all the answers, all the questions change. One day the world looks so normal, next it looks so strange. Looking over the ocean on a sunny day. I'd like to stay here forever, it would be okay.